Right, my name is Dr. Jaffer Khan. I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. I have been in Dubai now for 25 very nice years, and I have done all my training in the United Kingdom prior to coming here. My main interests over the years have been reconstructive, hand, burns, and aesthetic surgery. And then, of course, as the market forces determined, we moved pretty much to aesthetics. But in the last 2 years, I've had this new reawakening, if you like. Perhaps you can call it a boredom of what I was doing. And then we moved more into what we now call functional and regenerative medicine. And I'll probably speak a little bit more about that, but that's what I wanted to say for the moment.
It is a deep and genuine privilege to be here with Dr. Jaffer Khan. And as he was introducing himself, he was here 25 years ago. And guess who was one of his very, very early friends? It was me. And it was the good old days. And we've seen a lot of things together.
Good old days in Wafi.
The good old days of the Wafi. And I actually am still there. So that it's actually great fun. But on a more serious note, I think Jaffer, when he came here, he had a vision, as I saw it, and he literally set the reconstructive and aesthetic business and the whole environment. Literally, he was the lead, he was the brand, he was the person people knew. And now, when I see his awakening, his epiphany, and looking at regenerative medicine and functional medicine, I said, I have to talk to Jaffer and find out where the next steps are, where the world is going. So today we are here in Aeon Clinic, his beautiful, stunningly beautiful new environment where he's come and has created his new world in his future. Jaffer, welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Tariq, for that very nice introduction. Probably more introduction than I deserved. But yes, it has been quite an incredible journey in Dubai.
Yeah, and you have landed on the right side all the way through. I actually remember a discussion probably close to 20 years ago with you, where you were basically saying, and I remember this distinctly and I keep repeating it, is that as a surgeon, you only have a certain amount of time, and the time value of money and how you can utilize and scale is extremely difficult. And I remember that conversation distinctly as if it was yesterday. And you discovered, you spoke about Botox, you spoke about many, many other things. And today I see a culmination of that scaling process. You've created a broad-based group of doctors here in this clinic, and potentially you can enhance it and develop it and scale it. So firstly, congratulations on that vision coming through.
Oh, thank you. Yes, well, I think we were also at a great advantage 25 years ago. Dubai was in its infancy of progress. Private hospitals had just started. When I came, there were just 3 plastic surgeons. Now there are probably 350. You only have to drive up and down Wassel Road and Beach Road to see that we have a boutique service of every single thing that you want, from hair to nails to having a facelift. So, I mean, it was a time of opportunity. And I think a time for risk takers. But we've always, as physicians, we've always had one view: how can we build our private practice and get super busy?
Yeah.
And then, as probably around the time I spoke to you, maybe it was a time when I was getting busy. But then you think, well, how much can I work and how long can I work and what legacy can I leave? Because there isn't one unless you create one.
Yeah.
So of course we embarked on this whole journey of setting up clinics in aesthetics, but I think it's a little oversubscribed now globally.
Totally.
So, and I think, when you've been beautifying people externally for so long, I think you tend to lose out on the thought process of the internal beauty.
And I remember having that conversation about I said, you do the outside in beauty, what about the inside out beauty? And you said, at some stage we will get there. And the other part of that conversation, we're reminiscing here a little bit, but it's good fun, and I can be irreverent because it's our own our podcast platform. Basically, you're running out of boobs and bums. so what do we do now? And the next day it was lips and cheeks.
Too many people doing them. That's for sure.
That's right.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So therefore, and I also remember He said, as a surgeon, the only time when you can do real work is on the table and reconstructive surgery with burns and so on. And in a small city, in a small environment, you get a burn patient a month. While if you're
or not at all,
or not,
because
yeah,
it largely goes to the government sector,
Yeah.
which is fine. I think as long as you've got that facility.
Yeah.
Private medicine in this sphere of hands reconstructive burns, it actually gets quite narrow.
Yeah.
So this is where the market forces were towards aesthetics.
Yeah. So in our classic Hollywood Bollywood style, let's do a little flashback to little Jaffer. Were you naughty? Were you curious? Were you crazy? Were you smart?
Got enough time?
Probably not. Probably not.
Little Jaffer, well, how little? Can you qualify how little?
What sort of shaped you? Perhaps your parents, perhaps a school teacher, a professor, somebody. I just want to see what that ignition was, where you got that drive and
This is an interesting story.
And to really become a doctor of medicine and then take it on from there, because it is a journey.
This is actually a true story. When I was 13.
Yeah.
But it's quite a ridiculous story. But I will share it since you asked me and since it is between us. It's like we were injecting. I mean, this is in today's world, it would have been described as cruelty to animals. But our things we were studying in biology, we were studying hormones.
Right.
So we wanted to see the effects of testosterone on chicks. Believe it or not. So we were injecting these chicks with
chicks, as in chicken chicks, or as in women chicks.
No, those chicks wouldn't have done very well with testosterone. I think we do have them today because in the end, the world has changed. But these little chicks we were injecting with testosterone, they would start growing crowns and their behavior would get aggressive. So it was to show you the effects of hormones. Now, that was the biology experiment. And then, but we found that we were in groups. So I found this very nice girl who I had a crush on at the age of 13. Probably didn't know what a crush meant at that time, but anyway. And then, nobody wanted to inject the chicks, but I just didn't find it a problem. I picked up the chick, picked up the injection, put it in. She goes, "Oh, well done, doctor." And I thought, that sounds pretty nice. And then I think from that moment, it may not have been that moment, but it certainly was one of the factors I remember. So I thought, that sounds good. Why don't I just become a doctor? I like that.
Yeah, and it probably was there at a subliminal level all the way through, and because these are the kinds of little things we deposit in our brain, and they just come out at a subconscious level.
But had I known, Tariq, how hard I would have had to work and how long, I might have changed my mind, really speaking.
So you basically built your muscles, you built your skill in the UK National Health System?
National Health Service, yes. That was where we learned most about reconstructive. And the interesting part is that never was there any emphasis on aesthetics. During the training years, if you mentioned aesthetics, you wouldn't get the job. That's how it was. That's how ethical it was.
Yes.
I mean, they just didn't want to create a whole army of people only wanting to do boobs and bums, as you say. So you couldn't express that. And then after you finished all the training, then that was the time that you would go and beg people, "Can you please show me how to do this? Can you show me how to do that?" And that was a evolution, a process. But I think for most of us, we learned the principles, we learned the basis, and then we evolved as time passed, as in most professions.
So moving forward into where we are today, and as a futurist myself, because I reinvented myself 7 years ago as a futurist, because I was at that stage when I left Bloomberg. I said, what do I do? And then I remember presenting to 500 accountants at a session. It was actually at the Atlantis here. And they were eating out of my hands. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm a failed accountant and I'm presenting to these folks. And obviously I have a gift or a superpower or something. And that was really the launch of my public speaking career at that point in time. But what I was talking about was about the future. I was talking about innovation. I was talking about inspiration. I was talking about moving the needle, mindset shift, and so on. And that evolved into business, into various other things. So as a futurist today, I'm writing this book where we've got 100 of the world's greatest minds that have come together in a sort of collective. It's like a symphony of the future. And that's where we are talking to you to be part of that symphony to really shape the future. So as we look into the future, medicine and this whole wellness and health, I mean, firstly, all the healthcare business, I don't call them healthcare, I call them sick care. Because the entire system you have grown up with is sick care.
It's morbidity, that's what it treats.
That's right. And you only talk about health when you're sick. You go to a hospital when you're sick. You take medicine when you're sick. Why not just preventive rather than curative? I mean, what is your experience as a traditional doctor who has now moved into a more futuristic space?
Look, I think we have a world where we have been trying to do what we call early diagnosis. You know, first it was all about treatment. Mm-hmm. And then it became, okay, let's diagnose it early. And now, of course, we've taken one step further and we're sort of talking about how we can not have it at all. Mm-hmm. So in functional medicine, it is mainly you treat aging as the disease. Mm-hmm. It's because most diseases, they stem from aging, whether it's high blood pressure, cholesterol, and for the most part, cancer is age-related. So, and the child who is going to live to 150 is already born. So the pace of science is growing so quickly that I don't think it's going to take us another 20 years to move. In the next 5 years, we will have gained 20 years worth of knowledge. So I think we have to look at not just prevention, but we also have to look at lifestyle issues, which are basically linked in very much with this.
I totally, and I was going to probe you on that, is that aging is a very throwaway line. You said 150 or even 100, 120. It'll change society. It'll change marriage. It'll change religion. It'll change all sorts of change careers. It'll change. So when you start doing, basically extending people's lives, have those discussions started where you actually talk about the ethics of this and the balance and the psychology that goes behind it and the whole ecosystem that relates to it?
It's a really good question. I think people have been so hung up on on anti-aging, as you say, that maybe they're not thinking of the consequences. But it's definitely something I've given thought to. You know, when you're looking at people say, right, if all these people are going to live so long, then what's going to happen to the world? In other words, what's going to happen to jobs? You know, how are we going to be able to train a new generation when the old guys are simply not passing on?
Yeah.
But you know, like there's $4 trillion of an economy being spent at the moment for age-related diseases, and probably a couple of $100 million on age research on how to basically reduce the morbidity of aging. So there's a huge disparity, and you know, I think because it suits quite a lot of the industrialized, if you like, drug companies, because it's suitable, right? I mean, I'm happy, even doctors have been totally trained to pass a pill. Yeah. So you got this, hey, have a pill and have it for the rest of your life. Yeah. So I don't think people have moved out yet into even thinking about living longer by utilizing your own body's capacity to heal. In answer to your question, I mean, if we have people living longer, we save trillions in healthcare. And I think we have a more productive society. And you know, the graph is not like you become really sick and then die. You just die.
Yeah, exactly. So, you switch off and on, basically.
Switch off and on. And I think if people started living longer, then the whole diametrics of insurance, life insurance would change.
Sure.
You know, I think how big your family becomes. It opens up a whole Pandora's box. But remember, we've evolved through times when people were living 40, and now they're living to 80, and that hasn't really changed us a lot. But I still remember my mother praying, "Please give my family 70 years." Yeah, I remember this. Yeah. So in my lifetime, 70 was a big deal.
Indeed, and I, in my presentations, I sometimes have a laugh about it. And the origination of marriage came out 10,000 years ago when the mortality rate was around at 30. So you got married at 18, the girl was 15, you had 6, 7, 8 kids, most of them died anyway, and then you died. Life was cool. Then it became 40, and then 60, and now 80, 82. So
till death do us part.
Till death do us part.
Well, it was fine when you were only 30.
Absolutely.
Right, but now
suddenly you've got 50 years of living with one person. Now what you are now doing is creating another scenario. Now you're going to live with the same person for 100 years. Now that's exactly so.
Most people would agree.
So marriage will change. Religion is linked to going to paradise, whichever religion you go into. But you become more religious as you grow older, and now effectively you're becoming less religious because you're going to live till whenever you want to live.
And we've had time to evolve into things, right?
Yes.
But you remember that book in the 70s, early, I don't know if you read it, Alvin Toffler's Future Shock.
Yes, I remember very good.
So Future Shock talks about a lot of change in very little time. And we are now entering that era in anti-aging, I think. That, we're getting the stuff. We've got the stuff slowly. We've been increasingly more aware of medicine, of cures, of how to fix disease and so on. But now it's happening really fast. Every day there's something new, so this is going to be difficult to absorb.
I mean, let's talk about data and information for a second, because that's driving medical science at this point in time. And using Moore's law, you keep doubling and doubling, and the cost keeps coming down. Medical science at the moment is doubling the total amount of information available like every 3 months. So if you are studying it at university, by the time you finish, you're about 3-4 cycles out of date already with the information that's now available. So there's a lot of shift going on as far as that's concerned. I want to step back. As a futurist, I want to talk to you about one of the things which is driving a lot of shift in your business area, and that is data. Genome data, stem cell data, all of the elements that are there, and they're coming together, and we're becoming a data-driven environment where where folks like Apple, Amazon, and they might end up becoming the leaders in the medical science world rather than a pharmaceutical space, because they have all the data.
Well, artificial intelligence is all going to be data-driven. In the end, it's a constant in evolution process. For us, we're very hungry for this data at the moment, and there's not many centers who have this data, because if you're talking about creating a whole new system of healing, of regenerating your body, of actually using your body's innate capacity to cure disease, and I'm talking about all sorts of disease. You see, we function on longevity, because longevity people understand. But when people look a little bit deeper and say, all right, this longevity journey is actually going to fix disease and prevent disease for me, then it's a whole different science. And I think in the future, when we look back and we're going to sort of say, I should have done that earlier, because even when we look at stem cell populations in your body, from 30, they will, they diminish. But if you continue replenishing, you don't go down, it plateaus. It doesn't hit here, where if you start here, you will go up, but you won't reach where you would have reached had you started in this preventive journey from the beginning.
So how does one, or what
so,
to that
so
what
back
age?
to your question about data.
About
data. So there are not enough centers to provide this data to us, because each one of us, whether it's us or whether it's La Prairie or whether it's Shiva Soma or wherever, there's not a million people doing this. There might be at best 25 to 50 top centers in the world who are thinking about this journey, where you prepare the body, where you look at the genomics, where you look at the gut health, where you look at the whole profile of some of these sophisticated tests. They take 4 weeks to come back. And at that point, then you also look at the telomere length and DNA methylation. Where is your biological age vis-a-vis your chronological age?
Indeed.
Because you can't change the chronological one, but the biological, you can actually reverse. So when people start thinking about that, which is the right journey? Well, I don't know. We're having a shot at it based on our scientific knowledge, and so is everybody else. So the question is, who's got the right formula? I think this is work in progress. So data, how do you gather data when you don't have a process yet which has been established? So yes, you gather data and say, I had this, I treated it this way, this was the outcome. And I will continue to assimilate from different centers, similar outcomes, similar scenarios. Then I get my data.
Sure. I'm working with a company in the US which actually is doing exactly what you're talking about. What they're doing is anonymizing data, so therefore data sharing is not an issue, and any kind of security issues around that. And they initially started with children's hospitals and treating children with cancer. So, you're giving your child's data. Initially, it was considered a complete no-no and it was a hard stop. But the moment you started looking at it holistically and said, well, here are 50 hospitals and here are 500 kids. Now, if this data can help that child there anonymously and how it's being treated, suddenly there was this little shift. And now they're helping
100%.
literally. Yeah.
But you're talking about things that are mainstream.
Yeah.
Mainstream data for what we call, accepted forms of treatment.
Right.
Even some experimental, if you like, but those are generally require a lot of paperwork. But when you talk about the world of stem cells and you talk about regenerative medicine, in Europe and America right now, intravenous stem cells not allowed. So that data will not be available. People fly to Puerto Rico or they go to Thailand or even the UAE. We are allowed to give it in certain circumstances. And at the end of the day, I think the data gathering when it comes to regenerative journey of patients, that's going to take a little bit of time. And it's welcome, but I think it will take time.
Yeah. It's a nice segue to ask a question that I always start my presentations, my future presentations with, is the thing that is going to define our future. And I normally say it's trust, closely followed by ethics and values. That trust and ethics question, when it comes to your profession, particularly in this new space, because as far as I'm concerned, traditional medicine, they're corrupt and they're crooks. I've said it, you didn't. Because it's all about making money and it's about hypercapitalism and charging silly amounts of money, etc., etc. However, so from an ethical point of view, I mean, even during COVID, science and technology won.
Yes,
society failed. Distribution failed. Politics failed. Leaders failed. Even though science actually achieved it. And I know people, CEO of Moderna, who was talking brilliantly on the 20th of January 2021, I remember it distinctly today, to Stefan Bancel. And he wanted to change the world and stuff like that. Today he's worth $6 billion and he's forgotten all that.
Yeah.
Life changes. So where I'm going with this is a tough question. And that is that when you start making silly money, when you start discovering silly amounts of things, where does that trust, ethics, values, balance come together? And how do you, within your community and the doctors that you're building, how do you work on that? How do you think about that?
Well, I think I've thought about that quite a lot. So thank you for asking that question. Basically, look, whenever I interview somebody for a position I'm not talking about anything like stem cells regenerative at the moment. I'm talking about the basic stuff that we've been doing for 25 years, which is reconstructive, aesthetic, whatever surgery. So, I mean, I said to them, okay, listen, there's one thing about the ethos that we want you to understand. Don't give advice, don't use any product, and don't do any procedure that you're not prepared to do for a member of your own family. If this all fits, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, don't do it. Because, I think if you do, if you don't change people's lives for the better, you might as well not do business.
Yeah.
Now, medicine is a business. It should be an ethical business above all businesses because you're actually doing something to try and enhance somebody's well-being or his health status. And I think that, anyone who doesn't do that, you might say this sounds like, I just believe what goes around comes around.
That's true.
So if you have that basic ethos, it doesn't. So.
I love the way you've simplified it. Is what you wouldn't do to your own children and your own family, then you don't do it. And that's a very interesting ethical test.
I think so. Yeah. Unless you hate your family, in which case,
no.
Or you take advantage of it. Yeah. But look, in the world of regenerative, it's even more pertinent because we're in an age of regulation. Now, regulation, it kind of reminds me, if you like, of the panic that happened, as you said, in COVID. Everybody jumped. Nobody really knew what to do, but they would just follow the leader. And I won't get into immunizations and stuff like that. It's a hugely controversial subject, but I wasn't prepared to take one. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Because I said, how can you in 6 months determine, I'm talking about the messenger RNA, Moderna stuff, not typical get the virus, it's dead virus injected. The Chinese vaccines we had, I took those. Standard vaccine protocol and vaccine research. But I wasn't prepared to do anything else in a hurry, particularly something that's messing with my RNA, DNA, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Anyway, my point is that in the recent times of regenerative medicine, yes, stem cells, there is a question mark to it, but there's been a lot of research, and the safety profiles are very vast. So when people come to us and spend a lot of money to do a stem cell program, the first thing I will tell them is, this is the science, this is where we are, these are the potential benefits that you could have, including reversing your age, which I can actually show you, with a laboratory test. Now, is this a very accurate laboratory test? It's as accurate as we've got. Am I promising you the world? No. Have I seen amazing stories in my life? Yes. And, that's it. So if you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, no promises. So I think that's all you can do at this point,
You mentioned something very interesting, and this is something I've heard more recently, and that's the chronological age versus the biological age. And it's a very new thing, and not very new, but it's not in day-to-day language, and it's now becoming more prevalent. So, and there are lots of people now who are taking too many supplements and doing all sorts of things, but you're taking more and you're reducing your chronological age, your biological age. Is this real? Is this, does that actually happen? And then you go in and sort of say, my heart is 40 years old, my lung is 50, and I am 60.
Look, the thing is, as far as the research goes, if you get onto a program, I mean, there are many programs, as you know, and if you get onto a regenerative medicine program, do some of the things you need to do around your gut, around your day-to-day lifestyle, because we've understood that epigenetics is what is important now, not the genetics. I'm sure you've heard of this.
Yeah.
So it says that if you do this for 2.5 months, you can move your biological clock back by 3 years. All right, does it happen for everyone? No. There are 30 billion cellular processes in your body every second. So if you take a deep breath, or you have a positive thought, at that moment, the proteins that are being transcribed are determinant of what is your state of mind. So you determine all of these protein syntheses which are going on in your body. And if you're doing it in conjunction with all of the other epigenetic factors like exercise, diet, and so on, of course you're making a positive contribution. And, research has also shown that socialization, talking to people, basically being a social animal is probably one of the most beneficial.
Indeed.
Right? So my mom is, mashallah, 84. She hasn't had a single regenerative treatment. Me, I've done it for 2 years. So I do my testing, and my biological age is, I think, 11 years back. I'm really happy. So I told my mom, I need you to come in because, you're diabetic. You
make me happy,
You're diabetic. You're not looking after your health. You're eating too much. Well, she's okay, but I always scare her. So we did this, and guess what? She's 15 years back without doing this. So what did she do? Well, my mom, she just loves to talk to people.
Absolutely.
She embarrasses us because she loves to talk to everybody. But that's what it is.
My funny story is my grandmother, my mom's mom, she passed away at 92, 93. Wow. And the last 12 years of her life, she was, going against every single advice the doctor ever gave to her. But she had 9 kids and 35 grandkids and 100 and whatever great grandkids, and every day she used to get in the car and go to some place or the other and have her gulab jamuns and have her biryanis and stuff. And her sons are saying, "What are you doing?" And she's saying, "I'm happy." And the doctors are saying she's happy. Let her be. And she lived an extra 10 years beyond what most doctors were going to say. So I understand that, which is actually a very interesting point, because Dr. Mike Sinnell, who's also in the longevity space based out of, who's in the book, at some stage I'll connect you guys. Fascinating guy. And he said that you're going to live to 100. And I said, okay. He said, the other bits and pieces I can organize, but you have 2 or 3 things which I struggle with in the US. And I said, what's that? He said,
tax?
That's true. That's true. That's also true. That is also true. Uh, and he said, "You're very positive. You have a very sort of positive, futuristic look towards life. So you're basically very, as an optimistic person. You also seem happy and energetic and so on. And you talk about loving family and stuff. And he said, these are precisely the things that I struggle with in the US because I am struggling with mental health issues and depression issues and stuff in that space as opposed to the pure physical aspect. So he said 3 out of the 5 things you already sorted out because you're a positive, fun, happy person. And that's halfway there.
It makes a huge difference. Yeah. It really does. Yeah. But in today's society, the pressures that we have, particularly in the United States, I can't imagine how the world's largest economy has the maximum number of problems these days.
Indeed.
Maybe we don't see other countries as well. Maybe it's not studied as much. I don't know.
But the world's largest economy has also got the world's largest debt. Since 34 trillion. So how rich
and keeps
are
going
they?
Up?
Yes.
That was 1 second ago.
Exactly. Getting to a little bit granular in terms of some of the medical stuff that's going on, things like digital twins, the whole concept of really just building your duplicates. So Tony Robbins and there's Peter Diamandis, they came and wrote this book called Life Force together. Ray Kurzweil, who is with Google, he's their chief innovation future officer. He talks about singularity in the year 2029, where computers and humans basically come together and are at almost equal. And he wants to live forever. And he takes about 50 supplements a day. And they've now built their digital twins. And they're testing everything on the digital twin because before you test it on me. They're using stem cells literally on a daily basis. He had a shoulder injury and that's how he fixed it in 3 or 4 days. Where is all of this going? And are we now creating another 2-tier environment where the rich people can get all the longevity and the poor people just die away?
I'm not sure that's not the grand plan.
I'm sure it's not.
But I mean, at the end...
So how do we democratize it? How do we end up making it livable, workable, addressable?
I think if you're talking about this, I think it will follow the same pattern that most things in life have. When we were doing some very stringent biological tests, for example, when we were having the Human Genome Project, the sequencing and all of that, that was $100,000, $200,000. I mean, the whole thing now is much, much cheaper, $1,000 or less. So, eventually it will all filter down. But I mean, when you talk about privileges of the rich, I mean, the Titanic wasn't the best idea, right? So in the end, but they got on board because they were wealthy. And so I think this will be always the case in new and futuristic stuff. The best, if you like, stuff goes first to the people who can afford it. But it will come down, and I believe it will. There will be a dissemination of this
drastically, because that is how technology works, and by definition, it gets faster and gets cheaper. And
I wouldn't even like to entertain the thought of living forever. But I guess it's individual.
It's absolutely, and I think we grew up from in a different world where we saw our mortality as something that we have to deal with, but a young person coming in, and if they feel that they can live until they switch themselves off or on, they can, by definition, keep living.
If you could, sorry to interrupt, but if you could hold, if you could hold yourself, maybe you wouldn't want to, because I mean, if you actually were finding, I can do today what I can do tomorrow, what I can do the day after, and nothing is changing, then would you commit suicide? No.
No.
You'd probably just say, all right, let's just carry on. And you carry on as long as you can. Now, whether it's physically possible or not, that's another story.
So let's just take Exhibit A. I come in into this kind of a function. What do I go through? What is a simple process? How do you take that?
Well, first, firstly is to understand basically the patient, because when you talk functional medicine, you're talking about integrating all the body systems.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So basically, that's the first thing, is to sit down and have a long chat, and you have a geneticist, you have a naturopathic doctor, you have a general practitioner who looks after certain of the other, if you like, morbidities. The interesting thing is when people come in for longevity and you do a consultation for longevity, you begin to unearth a number of morbidity-related issues. And they don't, that's not why they came to you, but they disclose. And then as you have an hour, it's an hour and a half. And then there's a series of blood tests, genetic tests, gut biome tests. Basically we determine what bacteria are growing where and how, what quantity. Because, you are basically separated from a sewage line by a single cellular layer. And the absorption capacity of this layer, or the malabsorption capacity of this layer, really determines what toxins you're going to have in your system. And so once we've done all of this, then we start preparing the body for regeneration, which means a host of, if you like, hyperbaric oxygen, ozone therapy.
I saw that, yeah.
Photodynamic therapy. Probably a lot of the doctors you've spoken to have mentioned these different then plans for peptides.
What are peptides?
What is the most commonly used peptide? Insulin.
Okay.
So insulin is the most commonly used peptide. So now these peptides, basically, they tell you the proteins, which they tell your proteins how to be manufactured, in other words.
Understood.
To put it mildly. So anything that requires protein synthesis in it, for example, repair of muscles, a repair of your organs, systems, you have different peptides which help you as your own levels might be diminishing, which help you for protein synthesis. And of course, that is super important in building muscle mass and so on.
I saw all of this thing happening in terms of everything that you're doing. Normally, I'm quite healthy and stuff, but I am having one problem.
What's
diagnosis. Her name? Her name starts with an S. Sleep.
Okay, right. And that is so important.
Yes, indeed. And I didn't see that. Perhaps you did, and it wasn't mentioned. But
sleep we do have sleep studies, which we offer, and we do have then machines which we give for sleep apnea. There's number one cause. So there's a number of causes. The most common is that you're overthinking. So when you put your head to the pillow, there's no off.
It doesn't switch off.
So you just can't. So like we've all been there, right? And you got a flight in the morning, or you have a big exam in the morning, and you can't switch off.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like I have sleep apnea, and I didn't have a machine for years. My dad had sleep apnea. My brother has it. So without this machine, I was waking up 2 to 3 times in the night.
Which is where I am right now.
So, but do you have sleep apnea?
No, I guess I do. I'm assuming I do.
Well, let's put it this way. Does anyone complain of you snoring?
I have been snored. Yeah, I have been received that complaint. Yes.
You have received. So it's a very typical sort of, you kind of do this.
Yeah.
Do this. Yeah. You're quiet and then you go.
Yeah.
If that's it, that's sleep apnea. That's typically diagnostic of sleep apnea. But then, if you like, then you get a sleep test done, and once you've got this machine. In the days of my dad, poor guy, God bless him, he wouldn't touch the machine because it was like this much apparatus on your mouth.
That's right, yeah.
So you couldn't sleep anyway.
Yeah.
But now they're more sophisticated, very silent. They just sit on your nose and they work well.
So, we can talk a lot about stuff, Jaffer, but what I really wanted to...
So in answer to your question, previous question, so once you prepared the body you see, when we're doing ozone, for example, we're doing filtration. We take the blood out, we pass it through the ozone filter, and basically all of the heavy metals, bacteria, viruses come out in that.
Right.
Now, so you cannot plant a seed in infertile soil. And the same thing with a stem cell. Because a stem cell is a pluripotent cell. It can become any cell it wants to. But you need to plant it in the right environment. So the whole idea of purification of the body, of if you like, stabilization of your epigenetic, and then giving you stem cells, this is the way we go. And exosomes also, you heard the term. Exosomes is a very popular term now.
Indeed.
They're the acellular products which tell your stem cells what to do. So they're the directors, and they work quite well in conjunction. So it's all a fascinating science. And I'm, by the way, not an authority on the treatment. I must make that disclaimer, because I'm just super interested in the space, and I think for us, if somebody comes in and says, I want to feel younger, well, the next thing they're going to say is, Doc, what about this? What about this? What about this? So this is our core business. We don't need to sell it. It gets sold itself.
Right. Now, at a very, very simplistic and very natural level, one of the things I do is yoga. And my yoga guru, Sanjeev, who I think is the most amazing healer in the city.
Sanjeev?
Sanjeev Krishnan is his name.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant guy. And when the doctors give up, they go to Sanjeev and he fixes you. And there's simple things like breath and breath management and things like that. And I found that at a very simplistic level, very human level, something I can relate to. And try to build it into my life on a daily basis and create a ritual in terms of my breathing and so on.
Do you meditate as well?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
about 30 minutes a day. Yeah. So 30 minutes of meditation, about 10 minutes of breathing, and about 10 minutes of exercise and stuff. So that's sort of my ritual, which keeps me sane. All I need to do is get my sleep apnea sorted out and I shall be fine. But where I'm going with this is that I love the philosophy of regenerative medicine, the way you're describing it, and this natural healing processes which our human body actually has that capability of doing. We start marrying these two, and perhaps that is the nirvana, that is the new space that we can...
That is the future space.
Yeah.
That is the future space,
Yeah.
and I strongly believe in its capabilities. I have seen in the 2 years that I've been doing this, well, it's only been a year and a little bit, I guess, since the clinic opened, some pretty nice success stories. You'd be not surprised to hear that in our program, we have, at the end of the day, yoga, workout, cold plunges, gym activity. So we've incorporated all of that. It's not you just come here and have an experience. This is the Atlantis is known as an experiential resort.
Right.
So the whole experience is not just that you come in and this place is not meant to make you feel like you're in a hospital. You're meant to feel like you're in a spa. So even that has a positive influence. And we have pulse electromagnetic field beds and a lot of little toys and gimmicks, which I think all contribute. And none of them is the bee's knees and the total cure-all. It's a process.
Yeah.
And the most important part of it is understanding the process and putting it and implementing it in your... And interestingly, with stem cells, one of the things, what is the most legal poison in the world?
Okay.
What is the most legal poison?
I would say tobacco.
Yeah.
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's alcohol.
Yeah.
And tobacco. You're probably right. I never thought about tobacco because I don't smoke. But generally speaking, yeah. And so but for every occasion that we want to celebrate,
Yeah.
people pop a bottle open. Okay, but this is just normal. It's reflex.
Yeah.
So even something like that, if you say, all right, I'm just going to have a beer because I want to stop drinking. But you lower your threshold, you change, because you make that positive change, everything will change.
What about things like happiness and contentment? Where does that fit into all of this? And we can inject this and we can do that and we can run around. But that inner peace and happiness and wellness...
I'm sure you've asked this question to a lot of people.
I have, indeed.
Because it is an elusive question. What is happiness? And then people say happiness comes from within. I believe it does. I mean, look, I think I've also read a lot, and I also believe in manifestation. I'm a huge believer in manifestation.
Interesting.
Joe Dispenza's whole philosophy. Yeah. And I've used it in my life unknowingly for most of my life.
I used to visualize also, but I'm doing less and less, but I should.
But I mean, it's just, you either do it, or you call yourself a daydreamer maybe, but just visualization is not it. You have to implement some things, you have to work. We know that, but happiness, I guess it's elusive to everybody who lives a fast-paced life. I find it very difficult to sit at every moment of the day, despite all of God's blessings, to sit and say that, am I truly happy? And contentment, well, I struggle with contentment a lot.
What's the number one requests / desire people have when they come to you? I want to live to 100. What are the kind of questions you normally get?
You mean in plastic surgery or in regenerative space?
In regenerative space.
Future medicine.
Yeah. Because I'm really on the future of medicine.
Look, I think for that, most people will come in wanting to live longer, better longer. And, we right now, as you mentioned, and hopefully this will change, is ultra high net worth individuals who have everything. Now they want to enjoy what they have for a longer period of time. But But athletes have been doing this for 10 years. When
Sure.
you got Rafael Nadal, Federer,
Yeah.
how are they playing at international level at the late 30s? Because they probably knowingly, they have done treatments for their joints in regenerative fashion. And so their joints are stronger for longer. And that's basically what people are looking for when they come here. And some just come for a boost, just a drip, immune boost, this and that. IVs have become quite popular. So most people who want to come in, they just want well-being. They want to feel better. And they just want to have a less stressful time, a less stressful day. And I think that's mainly what we get.
Anything I haven't asked that you think in this conversation we should have?
No, I think you've asked pretty much everything very comprehensively. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the main thing, the main message here is even doctors don't understand future medicine. I'm sorry to say. If I hadn't bumped into a particular person in the changing room after surgery in a hospital, and we had a 5-minute conversation that just changed my whole mindset.
Right.
So, the world is being run by protocols of medicine based on what professors have taught generations of doctors. Who is prompting the professors? I don't know, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think the more you study, if you study science, and most doctors do, then we have to realize that we have an innate capability of healing that we just have to allow ourselves to activate.
So from when I look at it as a futurist, I see generative AI and all of the components in terms of your diagnostic work will potentially 80-90% of that will go on to some kind of a technological space because it can absorb so much more information.
Yep.
So when I say that anything that can be digitized will be, because it'll be 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper.
Sure.
But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, which is love, harmony, caring, heart, soul, spirit, judgment, caring, intuition, imagination, critical thinking, those are the things that will be 1,000,000 times more valuable. So when I see a doctor of the future, I see a carer, not a diagnostician. And that's my view of the future, is that you will hold my hand and say, how are you feeling? As opposed to, this is all of the 50 things that is wrong with you and stuff like that. So that compassion and connection, is that really the future of medicine?
Compassion and connection should be the future of practically everything. If we were to look at any industry, I mean, because we begin to lose humanity.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, I'm not a politician, but what is really, really in a totally different context, the issue what's happening in Palestine today, and I'm not an aligned person. I don't believe, I don't see religion, I don't see race, I don't see color, but I do see a huge, political body called the United Nations.
Yeah.
Which for the most part, I haven't in my lifetime seen anything massively positive come out of. And the world, where is the righteousness of all of it? Where is the humanity in all of that?
Where's the justice? Where
is this?
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody will have a view, and I'm not here to discuss that. But I'm just saying that we're losing that.
Sure.
And your question is pertinent.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the United Nations, World Bank, IMF, all of these things, they were developed 80 years ago for a problem 80 years ago to solve and resolve issues 80 years ago. Things have moved on, data has changed, life has changed, politics changed, polarization has happened, societies have changed. But they haven't been able to move. We actually need to reinvent our institutions. And I started with trust. The trust deficit for institutions and for governments, for leaders, for people is getting bigger and bigger. And we need to find a way to bridge that.
More people are suffering.
Yeah. But in my trust studies that I speak a lot about trust, the number one trusted person across the board is the doctor. And lawyers are about 18 down, consultants are about 30 down. But doctors and teachers are right at the top. And
I become therapist for a lot of the patients.
Yes, absolutely.
When they talk to you.
So when I look at that and I'm saying, you're right at the top. You have an extra responsibility now in this sort of new world that we are living in, because I don't know whether doctors are taught empathy. A lot of them naturally have it, But empathy is something you can be trained on and stuff. So what I'm saying is you can be taught science and stem cells and all of this, but caring and empathy. Nurses are better than doctors mostly in terms of caring.
They have a little more time. Perhaps
that's the case.
But no, I believe I take on board what you're saying. I don't think there's anything we're ever taught about empathy, apart from our Hippocratic oath, which we take.
Yes.
But I think at the end of the day, it has to be a part of you're dealing with people. You have to.
Because my big thesis, and then we'll end with this, is that in 1451, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, and everything changed. One innovation, which changed religion, commerce, education, everything changed. One printing press. Today, there are about 25 or 30 of these Gutenberg moments happening together, and it's in stem cells, it's in nanotechnology, it's in AI, blockchain. They're all coming together, and they're all converging. That's what the book Voices of the Future is about. And then we're cooking this in this cauldron, which is the book. And then we're coming out in terms of divergence. What are the new things that are popping out? And unintended consequences, the crossover of different industries, which we haven't anticipated or even planned, but they sort of happen together. And my core epilogue that I am writing, as far as this thing is concerned, is that we can't anticipate all of these things, but if we can look at ourselves as human beings and go down to that humanity and empathy and trust and ethics and values and stuff, that is our future. Our future, the more digital we are getting, the more human we need to be. And that is how I want to end. At least that is my view, because I've done deep research in this, and I keep coming back to the same old basic stuff, which is humanity and connection and love. And love is a much higher level of vibration than anything else. So why don't we spend most of the time in the love space?
It doesn't make money.
Then we need to focus our way to make money through love.
Well, no, I'm answering your question. I'm not agreeing with the fact that one shouldn't. I definitely think. Listen, you're in a state of euphoria when you're in love.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's any better feeling. There just isn't.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think you should be calling it, the love machine here or something like that.
I think I'll get thrown in jail.
Probably not. But but I think that is the sort of thing that we need to be looking at in the future. Maybe I've lost the plot and I've become soft in my
but I
own
mean,
nature.
look, we have a psychiatrist on board. We have a stress management specialist on board.
Yeah,
we have to look at mental health as super important part. I'm not talking mental health as people who are sick.
I know.
I'm talking about mental health to make people better.
Sure,
make them happier, make them realize what they have.
Yeah.
Because one of the key things everyone says is, while you're planning for all of these, huge games, huge futures, you never lose sight of the present moment. This moment, people talk about mindfulness. It's this moment. Be happy in this moment.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's actually one of the opposite side of being a futurist, is to be a presentist, is to live in the moment, live the well-being, living on that. But before I end, my final question to you is, if we get into a time machine, and it's most appropriate, this place is a time machine, and together we go to our 100th birthday, what are you celebrating? What are you celebrating? What are you seeing outside in the window, when you look out?
What am I celebrating at 100? The opportunity to have had the experience. That's about it. I don't think there's a whole lot else to celebrate.
I think that I have the 3H strategy: happy, healthy, and 100. I think we need to do those 3 H's. And if you were to leave a little message in this bottle and somebody picks it up, just one liner, as a moment of inspiration or special advice, what would that be?
Don't work too hard.
That's a great piece of advice. Nobody said that. I've interviewed billionaires and people like that in there. Interestingly enough, they're all, they may have $1 billion in the bank. None of them spoke about money. Not one. So that we chase this whole thing about money and this.
So. I think it's more about trying to continuously challenge yourself.
Indeed, yeah. Learning, growth, development,
then it goes on. But I think, don't work too hard. I have to keep telling myself that.
Yeah.
Because it's one heartbeat. You're one heartbeat away from not being here anymore.
Yeah. Indeed.
right? So you're very, very fragile.
Yeah.
We don't think so when we become, field marshals. We don't think so, but we are.
Yeah, that's a very philosophical thought. Guys, we are ending on this philosophical thought in terms of one heartbeat away from death, from not being here anymore. But what an amazing, fascinating conversation. We meandered all over the world when we came back. But ultimately, I think one of my takeaways from this amazing conversation with Dr. Jaffer is back to humanity, back to some of the basic stuff. And regenerative medicine and functional medicine looks at us at a holistic level. And I think that's what we need to do, is to take a step back, take a deep breath, and find a way to build our future. My thesis of the future is we need to be much, much more human. And what I discovered today is, in that integrated space, I can be 100 years old, but I can be 60 while I'm 100. So that's something to work towards. Dr. Jaffer.
Thanks very much, Troy.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you.